Okay, so we're going to get started. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Thank you for saying hello. My name is Julica, and I am really happy to be here doing this presentation for you. I think this is my third or fourth for the Women's Resource Center, and I'm so grateful that you keep bringing me back. Thank you, Jane. I want to share with you that this presentation was born of a conversation that I had with a professor who is my coaching client. And so I was helping her out, and we were doing some life stuff, and then we kind of transitioned into a little bit of instructional design. She started talking a little bit about teaching, and it threw me back to my days of teaching. And I started thinking about it and getting really excited about it. And so then I called up the Women's Resource Center and said, how about the intersection of post-perfectionism and teaching? So that is what we're here to talk about today. I will say very briefly that I have been a life coach for the past 10 years. And before that, I was a graduate student for 10 years. Most of those years pretending to do my dissertation, but actually teaching and talking about teaching. And so this is a significant thing for me to return to the conversation that was before all of the things that I've been doing in the past decade around life coaching. And I've discovered in doing so that I've actually been doing the same thing in different places. And that I kind of knew when I left academia to go be a coach that the reason I left is because I was coaching my students in the classroom. That's really, I was interested in their life development. And I was spending way too much time in office hours and not enough time, well, certainly no time at all on my dissertation, but not even on their grading or on their work. Like, I just wanted to connect with them. So I made a good choice for me in terms of becoming a coach. But it's very exciting for me now to bring back all of the things that I've been gathering in the past decade and then apply it to the classroom, to the experience of being a teacher. So that is my goal, is to share with you today. And I have to begin with a confession. I was terrified to do this presentation because I left graduate school and I was going to be presenting to faculty, and I was like, oh, and I found myself falling into perfectionist patterns, and I found myself wanting to pull out all the bells and whistles. I was going to do a prezi, I was going to show you videos, I was going to just swarm you with information and data, and I realized that that was not really walking my talk. So as a response to that process that I discovered myself having, I decided to go really old school. So I'm actually just going to use this. I'm not turning anything on. I'm hoping, my goal is for me to do a presentation that is being videoed, as I mentioned to you before, and then we'll shut the video off, and then hopefully we'll have a great conversation that just stays in this room. So that is my hope. So the main idea of this presentation is really this presentation is my attempt to offer you this book, The Courage to Teach. How many of you have read The Courage to Teach? Cool. Do you love it as much as I do? Yes, you have your own copy.
And it's sacred to me because it's signed by Parker.
Really?
So
Yeah.
yes.
Cool. Awesome. You'll have to tell me if I did it justice. It is my intention to share with you the things from Parker Palmer's approach to teaching that really speak to me. And I think he is talking about post-perfectionism, but he's not talking about, he doesn't use those words. So I'm going to weave in all of the coaching stuff that I've learned in the past decade into this conversation. And the way that he introduces this book is brilliant. I think that it stands for the introduction for this conversation as well. Usually when we talk about teaching, we talk about what to teach. Like, what subject am I teaching and how do I teach it? Sometimes, if you go a little bit deeper, you talk about how. How am I going to teach it? Once in a while, people will talk about why. Why am I teaching this? Why am I teaching this and not that? Or, what is the motivation behind my teaching? But almost never do we talk about who. who is doing the teaching. And the main premise of the Courage to Teach, and I would offer you, the main premise of the book, but I think bigger than just this book, is the idea that good teaching comes from the identity and integrity of the teacher. You have to be in integrity with yourself. You have to know who you are as a teacher and be good with that. And then you can be a good teacher. And that's what we're going to talk about. How and why and how does that come about. So that's basically what I'm offering you today. Now I'm going to backtrack. Before we go into talking about teaching, I am going to offer you a few ideas and definitions around perfectionism and the stuff that I'm bringing from the coaching side. Okay? So from the coaching side, the first thing I want to share with you is the idea of post-perfectionism. There are many different brands of perfectionism. We all get triggered in different ways by different things. But in general, I would say that perfectionism is that drive that we sometimes experience to overperform, over-prepare, overachieve, like that there's this like never enough kind of feeling. Yeah, you're all nodding. That's why you're here. And it's draining. And it's this beast, and you feed it, and you feed it, and you feed it, and it just gets hungrier, right? So post-perfectionism, in my definition, is loving what is. Loving what is for yourself, in your life, in this moment, in this classroom, in this student. Loving what is there. And trusting that what you bring to the table, to the room, to your life is enough. It's a pretty radical idea for those of us who struggle with perfectionism. I have done presentations on perfectionism before, and today is not that, but I really welcome any questions that you might have around perfectionism. The one thing that I will share before I move on to another piece is I had my eyes open wide when I understood the relationship between perfectionism and shame, and trying to hide from shame, move away from any fear of being shamed. And I owe my understanding to Brené Brown. If you have not seen Brené Brown's TED Talks, I urge you to see them. Stat. And I really like all three of her books. I especially like her second one, The Gifts of Imperfection, for those of us struggling with perfectionism. It's really lovely. So if you want to talk more about Brené Brown and perfectionism, please make a note, and I would be happy to share that with you later. The other thing that I wanted to share with you is something that I learned from Martha Beck, who is the person who trained me as a coach. And that is my coaching framework, is Martha Beck's work. So I'm going to share with you the different... How many of you know Martha Beck's work? Okay, cool. A couple of you. Thank you. So I'm just going to review very quickly the difference between the social and the essential self. Do you remember that distinction, kind of? Okay, good. So then I'm not boring you. So Martha Beck talks about two different parts to us, and it doesn't really translate to the ego and the id and that kind of thing. We don't like that. But some people like to immediately go there, so I just sort of name it so that we can go, no. But the social and the essential self are different parts of our being that have very different needs, ways of being in the world, and reasons for being. The social self is avoidance-based, is conforming, predictable, planned, imitative, I can never say that word right, and hardworking. The social self is the part of you that develops when you're a little kid and you want your parents' and your teachers' approval. This is what you do to feel safe in the world. Right? The essential self, as the word implies, is your essence, who you really are. The essential self is attraction-based. So it's interested in, do I like this? Do I not like this? How do I feel about this? It's unique. It's inventive. Surprising. Very surprising sometimes. How many of you have read Liz Gilbert's Eat, Pray, Love? So I love this idea that she didn't know what she wanted. All she knew is she wanted to learn Italian. That was her essential self. Her essential self wanted to learn Italian for no good reason except that she wanted to learn Italian. That's how the essential self can be, like a kid, and not very easy to rein in if you let it. Spontaneous. And playful. Okay. Which one gets rewarded in the academy? Yeah. This one. And those of us who are perfectionists, even more so. Those of us who are perfectionists have, in a culture where our social selves are already on overdrive, we are la crème de la crème people. We are the most social self-oriented. Because somewhere along the way, we decided that we really needed to earn that approval, that, for me it's approval. For other people, it's something else that they're looking for. But whatever it is that they're trying to earn, a sense of safety, of approval, of belonging, it's a really deep need. So I have been, for the past 10 years, helping people do archaeological digs and find their essential selves. And I've been finding my own, because I have to walk my talk. So I kind of do it, and then I help other people do it. And then I find another thing that I have to clean up, and then I help other people do it. And it's sort of, I'm a few steps ahead of my clients. It's a wonderful experience. And I think that, although I love the work on an individual basis, I also think that our institutions can use this type of work as well. So that's why I do this kind of thing, to try to reach more people more broadly. Questions about the social and the essential self or post-perfectionism? Those were the definitions that I wanted to front load before we dove into the conversation around teaching in particular.
Can you explain the avoidance-based?
Yes.
Give an example of what that would look like?
Yes. So the social self has this command: stay under the radar. Do not be noticed. Your social self really gets triggered when you're a teenager. How can I fit in? How can I fit in? Please, just make me fit in and be cool and be loved. So you're not, anything that is different or that is risky, that you might be attracted to, your social self is like, no. So your social self is avoiding anything that will put you in the spotlight, get you in trouble.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Other questions? I want to say that I really appreciate all of your nonverbals. I really dig your yeah and all of that. So thank you. Please keep them coming, because it gives me energy and it helps me stay up in sharing this information with you. It's also really nice to know that I'm not alone when I'm sharing this. It's really nice to see people not. Although it's sad, but whatever. We're in it together. So, all right. Having shared that framework, I want to share 3 things that really struck me about the courage to teach and about Parker Palmer's work. And the first thing that I want to talk about is, well, actually, we're going to do a little exercise, and then I'm going to tell you what I'm going to talk about around it. So I'm going to ask you to turn to the person next to you. We are all very happily even numbered. So I'm going to ask you to describe to the person next to you what makes a good teacher and what makes a bad teacher. Just for a couple minutes. However it comes out for you. There's no right answer, by the way. I would love to hear from a couple of you. What is a bad teacher?
Can't read their students.
Can't read their students. Thank you.
Monotonous.
Monotonous. Yep. What else?
I have a sort of punitive attitude.
Punitive attitude. Yeah, kind of scary. Like, yeah, using power in inappropriate ways.
Yeah.
We talked about unprepared.
Unprepared. Yeah.
We actually talked about what makes a good instructor.
Uh-huh.
So I would say everything that we didn't talk about. But related to the unprepared, I guess I would say lack of anticipation, like not being able to foresee or predict.
Yes. Yeah. Not with it, caught flat-footed, or not really reading the room, not paying attention to what's going on. Yeah, thank you. Not connecting. Yeah, great. Parker Palmer talks about it. To me, it sounds straight out of Charlie Brown. The wow, 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 grown-up speaking thing. He says it's when, actually one of the students that he interviews says, it's when bad teachers have a bubble of speech. They are separated from what they are talking about and what they are teaching. So in some ways you've named all of that. That separation shows up in all of the things that you have said. And I know that people do not wake up in the morning to say, today I'm going to be a bad teacher, right? Nobody wants to be a bad teacher. But I think that we don't have enough conversations to figure out what makes a good teacher and how do we become better teachers. And in the absence of those conversations, what we do is we self-alienate. So we start telling stories about how teaching is this thing that you have to do because it pays for your research, right? Like it's this sort of burden, now you have to go teach. But in fact, Parker Palmer says, and I completely agree and strongly believe, that we want to feel connection. And we want to feel like we are making a difference. And we want to feel like what we do matters and has made an impact. So I think we all want to be better teachers. And the first ingredient that I was backloading is passion. When you are passionate, you prepare. When you're passionate, you connect. When you're passionate, it crackles, right? Like people know that you care about it because you're showing it. I remember Mark Misrucky, my professor of statistics in my graduate program. Statistics is the thing that I care about the least. I mean, like really. I'm a qualitative researcher to the extent that I'm a researcher at all. I'm not really. But I have no use or interest in statistics, no offense to the statisticians in the room. I just don't relate that way. But I will never, I mean, it's been more than 10 years, and I still remember Mark Misrucky teaching statistics. Because what he would do is share his delight in the symmetry and in the elegance of the numbers. So he would take each of the formulas that we were using and he would do these proofs that would take 20 minutes and 4 boards. And it was just this like, okay, so here's what I did, and then we do this, and then check this out. He would go like that. I mean, he would be like, isn't that amazing? And we were like, it must be, because you are so passionate. You are so into your proofs, dude. That's really cool. I need to learn whatever it is that you are excited about. And so particularly women, which are present in the room, have this challenge of authority and power, right? And being taken seriously. So it's really hard to be passionate and authentic and at the same time hold that place of power and authority and I'm the boss, don't mess with me. But I think that that is the challenge. And I hope, and I would offer you the idea that there can be a way where you can do both, where you can hold the authority of the room and say, I'm in charge here, but also be really excited about what it is that you're teaching. In fact, I think that when you have passion for your work, for what it is that you are teaching, that gives you certainty. And when you have certainty in your subject, you have authority. So I'm going to give you a minute to just write for yourself, what am I passionate about? Where is my passion in my teaching? It might be a class that you're teaching right now. It might be a class that you're planning in the future. It might be something that just happened today or a couple weeks ago. Or it might be something that you have not connected with for a while. I'm going to invite you to just take a quick note. Where is your passion? And I'm going to offer the idea that the one or two other things that I'll have you write are more like seeds. So you can come back to this later and flesh it out more, but I just want you to start because I want to keep us moving because I'm realizing that otherwise we're not going to have time to talk because I have a lot to share. So that was thing one. Thing one is passion. Thing two is what kind of community do we create in the classroom? And so what Parker Palmer does in this book is he talks about 3 different models that don't work, and then he offers the one that he thinks does. So the 3 models of community that he does not like so much are the therapeutic model, which is the model that emerges as a result of the sort of the backlash to the traditional teaching. So there's this traditional teaching, right, where the teacher has all of the information and just shares. And so then there's this backlash, particularly in the 80s and 90s, when people start saying, what about our identities? What about the construction of knowledge? What about all this other stuff? And then there's these conversations that become therapeutic. And I have seen students hijack an entire classroom for a whole session because they're talking about something important for them. And that is important. That is part of the process. But done too much, you're doing group therapy. You're not teaching. It's not a conversation anymore about the subject matter. It's this feeling stuff that can get a little too far in the other direction, right? Another model that he offers that he says does not work is the civic model. So the idea of democracy, and we all come together. And by the way, he's saying there's good things in each of them, but they don't gel, at the end. So the civic model is the democratic model. So we're all going to come together and talk and have a process where we are all participating. That's good. But that is not necessarily the way that you teach something, because sometimes students need to learn facts. They need to learn how, what the discipline is trying to teach. And you can't take a vote about evolution. There's certain things that the civic model falls short. You can't use that model specifically. And then the third one is marketing. So looking at the student and their parents as the customer and trying to make the customer happy. We see a lot of that in the universities. And there's some value to that, sure. There's something to be said for actually treating students like they're important, because it is what the university is here for. But again, there is this hijacking element, and there's this, we lose the focus of the actual enhancing of the body of knowledge, which is really what we're trying to do when we come together to teach and to learn. So instead of these three models, what he offers is the community of truth. He says that the model is one in which we want to focus on truth as the process, truth as the center. And so before I share with you what that model looks like, there's something else that I need to share with you. He takes to task what he calls the objectivist myth in academia. And the objectivist myth goes like this. There is an object, the thing you're studying, biology, genes, whatever, culture, race, the object. Then there is an expert, the teacher. And then there are the amateur students who don't know anything. And the information and the knowledge flows down. And there are these baffles that don't allow the information to flow back up. So the expert receives information from the object but does not affect the object, right? In this objectivist myth. Like, you have to be completely separated from the thing that you are studying. You can't have bias, right? When in fact, some of the people who have done the most effective research are the ones that relate to their work and to their data, not subjectively in the sense that they try to make it mean whatever they want, but they are actually connected to it in a relational way, and they are engaged with their work in a relational way. And so this is what does not work. This is the model, but this is does this look familiar to you all? Because this is how we teach. This is what we're expecting. And the students arrive, and they wait. And they're just like, and they're on Facebook. and you know, and they have this kind of relationship of show me. Like, I'm not, prove it. Because I'm going to resist. Because that's the only place where students have power. By the way, an excellent book, When Students Have Power, by Ira Shore. Really interesting book. He is a professor in a community college in New York. And he upends everything about the classroom, including, like, he negotiates the syllabus with the students. He changes the seating arrangement. He does all kinds of things. It blows up in his face. It's a great book. Really interesting conversation around power and how we use power in the classroom and what happens. So anyway, I cheated and I created the community of truth last night because I didn't trust myself to be able to do this in 2 minutes. This is the community of truth, and this is the alternative to the objectivist myth, which I should probably put up for contrast, because it's really dramatically different, right? So this is the subject. This is what we're all studying. And all of these he calls the knowers. The people who are trying to know something, find more truth. And the other thing about this model that I didn't do in advance, because I kind of wanted to do it while we were here, is every single arrow, which connects to every single thing, which is why it took me a while to do, is two-directional. Every single arrow goes back and forth. I'm not going to do all of them, but when I saw this in this book, I was like, I just think it's brilliant. It is so helpful to think of, we are all coming together. And so then diversity and different experiences and different ways of knowing help because we're knowing things differently, and how we know things matters. And so then our work as the teacher is to model the knowing and to help others know with us, right? He uses this language. I wrote it down because it was so beautiful. So he says that what good teachers do is they teach the great thing about their discipline, that thing that turns them on, that just gives them joy. It might be a passage in a novel. It might be a STEM in a laboratory. It can be anything. But it is that great thing about the body of knowledge that they have devoted themselves to. I mean, that's what we do as researchers and teachers, right? Is that we just devote ourselves to this one area of truth. And then we come to share it with others. He shares this Hasidic tale, which is beautiful, where this rabbi tells him this tale of this man who says that if we're going to be successful in life, we need to wear this coat. And this coat has 2 pockets. And the one pocket is filled with sand, and the other pocket is filled with gold. And we need to be able to access both the humility of, I don't know anything, and I'm here with you, I'm doing my best, and the gold of, this is what I have already reaped. This is where I'm great. This is what I love. And if you have one, if you're always just humble, then you're not inspiring and you're not owning up your own power. And then if you're always just with the gold and always being full, then you're that. Then you're the expert, and there's no room for other people to fall in love with what it is that you're trying to teach. So I love this idea of both and. And the third thing that I wanted to share with you from this book is this idea that less is more. So he uses this poem by Blake: to see a world in a grain of sand and a heaven in a wild flower. Hold infinity in the palm of your hand and eternity in an hour. I love that. Oh, the video fell. It was so exciting, it just had to fall over. Thank you, Jane. That's a definition of a good classroom, if you ask me. This idea of, like when you're in flow and everything kind of stops and the whole room is electric and everyone is excited. I think that's what Blake is talking about. And what Parker Palmer wants to offer, and I completely agree, is that we think that in order to be good teachers, we need to cover the field. We need to teach everything. We need to give them all of the information. So instead of a grain of sand right here in the center that we can all look at carefully, we have a dump truck of information that completely overwhelms the students and silences them. So, yeah, and the last idea that I wrote down that I wanted to share, he says, opening a learning space is much harder than filling it up. And that is so true. It's easy to just talk, give, which is what I wanted to do when I first prepared this, because it's safe. Like, if I share enough data with you, you won't want to challenge me, and that will make me feel safe. But that's not really the conversation that we're trying to have. So I'm going to invite you to take another moment to write down your grain of sand. What is it? What are the 1, 2, 3 grains of sand that you know well, that you might be able to bring to the center of a community of truth? So I'm writing down now how to create this open learning space. How do we create this community of truth? And he talks about we need to teach in a space of paradox. We need to be comfortable with paradox. And he offers these 6 different paradoxes as the space for teaching. So I'm going to write them down and briefly mention them. The space needs to be bounded and open. It needs to be hospitable and charged. There has to be room for the individual voice and the group. There has to be room for the little stories. Those are the stories that the students bring as they are making sense of this information, and the big stories, which is the stories of the discipline, the exciting stuff, so that they start to belong to something bigger, right? There has to be space for solitude at the same time that there's community. And then finally, I think it's silence, yeah. There has to be both silence and speech. I love this idea of paradox. This is how we hold the space. There is not one right technique. There is no one right way to be a good teacher. But all good teachers hold this particular space where there's both and. And they know when to invite which because they are on it. As you said at the beginning, they're not caught flat-footed. They are reading the room. They are seeing what's going on. They have certainty. This is their classroom. They're in charge. But they are sharing their power because they're in a community of truth. So it's this, it takes more authority and certainty to share it than to keep it and to be the expert. So the very last thing I wanted to offer you before we talk is this idea of a teaching metaphor. Parker Palmer says that sometimes it's helpful to tap into the right side of your brain and live into a way of being as a teacher that can be captured with a metaphor. So his metaphor, he says, at my best as a teacher, I am like a sheepdog. I try to keep people on task, and I herd them back in, and I protect them. So I am like a sheepdog. And after I read that, I was like, what is my metaphor? And I think my metaphor is, at my best, my teaching is like a greenhouse. So it's a special space where there's room to grow, and it's protected. I love the idea of gardening as a metaphor because you can't force a seed to be anything than what it is. And that's how I feel about coaching and teaching. Like, I can't force you to be anything other than who you are, but it's my job to create that perfect environment that will help you bloom. So take a minute and see what your metaphor is. At my best, my teaching is like, or at my best as a teacher, I am like. And then just go with whatever shows up. Maybe nothing shows up, maybe you'll walk and 2 hours later it'll be like, oh, waterfall, I am like a waterfall, or something, Maybe it'll come to you right now, maybe later. I love it as an idea of something to lean on. Am I being a waterfall today? Am I being a good sheepdog? And so to close the presentation part, before we step into conversation, I want to share with you this poem, because I like to end my presentations with poems. They make me happy. This one is by Donna Markova. It's called I Will Not Die an Unlived Life. And what she describes is, I think, what we're doing when we teach. I will not die an unlived life. I will not live in fear of falling or catching fire. I choose to inhabit my days, to allow my living to open me, to make me less afraid, more accessible, to loosen my heart until it becomes a wing, a torch, a promise. I choose to risk my significance, to live so that that which came to me as seed goes to the next as blossom, and that which came to me as blossom goes on as fruit. So may your teaching be like that. May you live into your own teaching metaphor and play to your strengths and stay connected to your passion. So thank you for those of you watching from the video. We're going to turn that off now, but this is the first of, we hope, many videos that the Women Resource Center will be offering to those of you from afar. So goodbye. We're turning it off now.